Hey everyone, Park Howell here. Welcome to the brand new Park Howell show. I'm going live for the very first time Facebook Live. It's kind of crazy. It's a lot of fun. Hopefully it's all working. We'll just keep rolling here. But I'm really glad you're here at the show. I'm going to be doing these every Friday now, 10 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, and the idea is from every single show we are going to go through the storytelling process so that you'll be able to pull something out of every single show and use it immediately in your world. So it's really great to have you here. Thank you for being part of my inaugural show from my international headquarters in Phoenix, Arizona. I got my piano here. I've got my yellow couch back there. Hazel is not here today. I will bring her next time so you get a chance to meet our golden doodle, Hazel. She's always with me, but I thought she might be a little bit of a distraction as I'm trying to get my act together here. Hey, I want to start off with a special announcement. Today, not only am I starting my very first show, but it's our daughter's birthday. It's Corbin Winter. She's over in San Diego. I want to give a big shout out to Corbin on her birthday today. I won't tell you how old she is because she's now of that age and a woman that we don't like, they don't like to tell the age. But I got to tell you, if you want to see the work they do, her and her business partner Melissa have this incredible company called Powwow. It's Powwow Design Studio on Instagram. Check it out. They do the most marvelous event designs, wedding designs. They have a warehouse of the craziest types of artsy, bohemian type of furniture and artwork and macrames, and they can do events everywhere. They've done it for 200 people in Yosemite Park for a 4-day wedding up there in pup tents, to just doing some celeb events out in the desert around Palm Springs. So check her out, and happy birthday, Corbin. There you go, Powwow Design Studio on Instagram. Check it out. Now, on today's show, I promised you, I'm going to play this thing. It's all going to start from ferals. Do you guys remember ferals? Do you remember ferals? I think they're still around. When I was a kid up in Seattle area, we had ferals, and we loved going to ferals. Our folks would take us to ferals. They come running out with that big old zoo ice cream bowl. It's like this ginormous sundae of 100 different flavors in there, and they'd run out, and the bands were whistling and playing. I mean, it was always so much fun at ferals. Well, what I did before I learned how to play the piano is, do you remember at Farrell's, they had that player piano, an upright, very similar to this. And I would go as a little kid, and I would sit on that upright, and I'd put in my quarter, and I would play a song, and I would pretend I was playing to the entire crowd out there. I mean, it was great. They would laugh, they would give me little tips, and I was a kid in my heyday, and this was before the 3rd grade when I actually started playing. But Farrell's was one of the things that really got me going, so now I could do stuff like this. That's right. Thank you, Farrells. Thank you, Grandma Mabel. And thank you, Hannah Hubbard, for all the piano lessons. So one thing you'll learn about me is I studied music. I got a degree in music composition and theory at Wazoo, but I hated performing for people. I mean, total flop sweat. So what you heard right there was really completely my stress and adrenaline driving that. So that's why I probably played a little bit fast. But you know what? That's what our stories are all about, is finding what it is inside of us that really drives us. And when we find it, we can apply that to our world, to our business worlds, then we are absolutely living the dream. So, I've been in advertising marketing world for 30 years. I've run my own ad agency for 20 of those years. And this time last year, I did a big pivot. Now it's all about the business of story. What I am doing is bringing my career, my expertise in advertising, marketing, and brand story strategy, and what I learned, what Hollywood knows about storytelling, to help people just like you live into more powerful stories. That's my overall brand ideal at the business of story, and so this is another way to do this. Finally jumping into Facebook Live. God knows I've had enough guests on my podcast that have told us how to do this. Kate Volman for one of them. Thank you, Kate, for giving me the courage to come out and do this. And so over the course of the next, year, every Friday I'm going to bring you story tips. And today we are going to be talking about story marketing. Now it sounds awfully similar to content marketing. Totally get that. Content is king. I was reading something the other day that actually Bill Gates wrote something in his Microsoft newsletter back in like 1994, 95, 96 about content marketing, content being king. I don't know if that was the absolute genesis of it, but it makes sense that it would be coming out of Redmond, Washington. And now in this day and age, it's all about the content. I often say that brands used to own the influence of mass media, but no longer, because the masses are the media. So we have to create content that connects with the masses, connects with folks just like you on your terms, on your devices, in your world, placing you at the center of the story. So content is indeed king. And what we are trying to do here at Business of Story is actually elevate content, because we've gotten to the point that SEO drives everything. In fact, I was just in Whistler over the weekend, this past weekend. You can probably hear the head cold I now got because of that. But I was skiing up there for 3 days, and I was riding up the chair with a young lady who has a content marketing firm up out of Whistler, and she works primarily with North American companies down in the U.S. And she was talking so much about SEO, finding the keywords, of course, and making sure that you use those keywords over and over again, the very analytical side of being seen. But she, too, is saying that that's not enough anymore, that you have to sometimes sacrifice maybe all of those wonderful keywords peppered through, take a few of them out, and lead with story. Take people on a journey, connect with them on our basal levels, our reptilian level in our brain, because you know what? Stories are what make us human. Stories are how we make meaning out of the madness of being human. And it is stories, not SEO, that really connects with people and moves them to action. You keep telling them stories, they are going to come back time and time again to hear more about what you're about. So we haven't invented story marketing, but we want to bring it to the forefront, because we just think it's time now that people take this more seriously and get more focused. I wrote a blog post last week that got a ton of traction, and I started off by saying, when was the last time you owned a party with a listicle, going in and recalling that listicle, or that infographic, they hit you at the moment, you get an aha moment, but then you're moving on. So much of content anymore is about just hitting that quick hit, getting in, getting a bang. You want to get people to your site, but you're not keeping them there, because you can only keep them there for so long with a listicle and a clever infographic. It's when you come down and you capture those moments in your life that really, really make a difference and bring out the ahas in our world, and you start sharing those moments with your audiences, then you will connect with them like never before. Like I say, you hear me often say, if content is king, then storytelling is the kingdom's sorcerer. It's where the magic happens. It's how we are bewitched. One of my favorite all-time books, The Storytelling Animal by Jonathan Gottschall, talks about this intersection between story structure and brain structure, and how our minds yield helplessly to the suction of story. So I can go on and on about the proof points of why stories connect with us and why we actually care about them more than anything else. But suffice to say that it takes some effort. And if you're not using stories in your marketing, now's the time to really start pivoting to becoming a story marketer, using all of those tools and techniques in content marketing, but now bring purpose to it. And you bring purpose through telling a story. Now the story for you, for instance, when I was up in Whistler, it was Saturday afternoon. It was 2:15 p.m. in a little pub at the base of the mountain called Dusty's. And I was in there skiing. I was up there skiing with my brother and a bunch of buddies from high school, and they were still up on the mountain. And I was a little bit worn out, so I came down early to grab some lunch, and I was going to find a table because this band called the Hair Farmers. That's right, the Hair Farmers. Two dudes, lots of hair, great tunes. We're going to be playing at 4 o'clock, and they wanted me to save them a table. Well, I got in there. The place was packed and just getting more crowded, so what I had to do is go over and find a 6-top table, like the perfect spot. There were these 4 older guys sitting there and this one woman, and I went up and I said, look, I got a proposition for you. I'm going to buy you a pitcher of beer and anything else you'd like, it's just so I could have your table when you're finished with it. And they were great. We did that. I got a chance to sit down and chat with these folks. They've invited me over. They were so much fun. There was a litigator from Vancouver, an ophthalmologist from Vancouver, a venture capitalist specializing in rare minerals and gold, and some dude that owned a high-tech firm. He said actually about 10 different high-tech firms. Anyways, as we got acquainted and got going with this one guy, the ophthalmologist, he was the most talkative of the bunch, and he was a little bit, he was a lot of fun. But he was like wondering about branding, and he says, what really makes brands work? And I told him about business story and storytelling. He goes, yeah, but what stories do we tell? And I said, the trick is you are trying to find a way to connect your beliefs and values with your customers, because most brands, if they're really doing it right, they have beliefs and values that they are living into, and they connect their shared values with their audiences. And he kind of called bullshit on me. He goes, oh, come on, look, I ski on Solomon's, and I don't buy Solomon's because they've got some great high value or whatever. I just ski on Solomon's. I said, okay, fair enough. And I asked him, what kind of car do you drive? And he said, well, I drive I'm going to get this wrong, an R28, an R26. Anyways, it's a $120,000 Audi. And I said, oh, really? And he shared with me it was $120,000. And I said, well, that's kind of interesting that that's a value that you're sharing, that you paid that much for the car, but why the Audi? And he said, because of the road handling, it's got the pickup, it's got the get-go, it's got everything I love in driving. So I said, so you really value that road handling car, that feel of the road, that you're behind the wheel, that you have that independence. He goes, well, I guess, yes, I guess you could say so. I said, well, do you realize that that's what Audi stands for? And those are all the stories Audi tells you to connect with you on that level. Then he went on to sort of rail against Tesla. And he goes, I tried to drive a Tesla and I drove alongside of it. I hate those cars. And I go, oh, why is that? It's a personal, favorite of mine, a Tesla. I don't have one yet. And he said, because you can't feel the road. And it just takes off. There's no noise to it. There's no sound to it. I said, yeah, it's kind of like a magic carpet ride. You go, vroom, vroom, vroom. And he says, yeah, and I just don't like that. I said, because you value owning the road, driving that road. Tesla, that's not one of their values. Their values is whisking you from point A to point B. And then his buddy next to him says, yeah, and all that sustainability stuff is all BS too, because, those batteries create more carbon than is going on. And I go, well, that's interesting. Do you think people buy Teslas because they're sustainable or because they're fun to drive? And I think if you look into that, the Tesla story is, it's about the performance. It's about driving that magic carpet from point A to point B and whisking you along. The added value certainly comes in the energy savings and the sustainability side of it. But that's a value that they share through their storytelling with their customers. So I made that point to this guy saying, you are buying with your beliefs and values, whether you realize it or not, because these brands do a really good job of, first and foremost, owning their brand story of what they stand for, what they do better than anybody else, and then they connect those values with you. If you are a diehard Audi fan and you end up buying a Tesla, you're probably not going to be happy with it. And you know what? I don't think Tesla wants an unhappy buyer. I don't think any big brand like that wants an unhappy buyer. So it's all about connecting your values and beliefs with your audience's values and beliefs. That's where I think story marketing is more powerful now than ever. It takes the magic, if you will, of SEO and content marketing and putting out information that is entertaining and educational. But where people fall short is sharing those moments like the moment I just shared with you, because it places you as a customer right in the heart of that story. So story marketing, if you were to look at other brands that are doing a really good job with it, I think REI, recreational equipment, they do a wonderful job, especially with their Opt Outside campaign. Everything about that campaign was to create a movement and to invite you into the story from your point. They were very disruptive. If you don't know the campaign, it's about not shopping on Black Friday, that Friday after Thanksgiving, the biggest shopping day of the year, saying don't do it. Spend time with your friends and family. Get outdoors. And they do a marvelous job of story marketing, of not just selling you stuff. I mean, that's the end game, of course, but to invite you into a story where they're not selling it all and placing you at the center of the story. Red Bull does another wonderful job with this. Now, Red Bull, I would say, is a little bit more of stories you live vicariously through. Red Bull invented the energy drink market, and they've certainly given their brand wings through the stories that they share. But we get to sit back and look at these lunatics, racing their motocross bikes and jumping in their squirrel suits and flying up, Baumgartner jumping, from, 250,000 miles up, however far that was. So we get to live vicariously through those stories. And then they do invite us in, if you're crazy enough to do the Flugtag event, where you get to fly your own airplane off, into water somewhere for that softer landing. But it's brands like this. It's Charity Water does another nice job with it. You can go down the way. Airbnb invites you in, has you experience their story, and then has you share that story with the world. Story marketing, to me, is what really gets people to rise above the noise of the attention economy. I mean, we are all competing for minds, hearts, eyeballs, and ears. And we just can only take listicles so far. They allow us to scan, but it goes in one ear and right out the other. We show them an infographic. It's beautiful. It catches our attention. We may share it around, but you know what? It goes in your eyeballs and out your ears again. Stories you remember. So the three primary elements to story marketing I want you to be thinking about. There's really three acts to it. Act one is the first, truly own your story, your brand story. And that's what this program is going to be about over the next 10 weeks. Every Friday, I'll take you through one step of the story cycle. Next week, we will start with understanding your backstories. What is your number one position in the marketplace? What do you do better than anybody else? That is going to be the beginning of your story. It's going to be the foundation of your story. It's your first step out of the primordial muck of commoditization, when you really understand what you do better than anybody else, and then build your story off of that. So Act 1 is all about the story cycle processes, understanding your story, building your brand story so that not only you can live into and prosper from it, but your employees can, your customers can, your shareholders, your stakeholders. It is basically the theater upon which everything else about your brand is going to be shared. So that's Act 1, is really understanding your brand story, going through the 10 steps of the story cycle process, understanding your position in the market, your emotional promise that you make to your customers and that they receive, the personality in which you go to market, and make sure it's consistent across all platforms, and then, of course, your brand purpose. And that comes down to, I mentioned earlier in this show, my brand purpose with the business of story is simply to help you live into your most powerful stories. Most powerful stories as a business leader, as a brand leader, as an entrepreneur, a startup, a mid-market company, wherever you are, and then to help you help your audiences, being your customers and your employees, live into their most powerful stories. So that's Act number 1. Act number 2, and I'm working with a wonderful company now out in Melbourne, Anecdote. And they are Sean Callahan, Mark Shank out there at Anecdote, and I'm working with them on story spotting or story finding. So what I've learned in all this, it's not enough just to get your story, your brand story together, but now you've got to go find the stories within your organization, within your customer engagement, within the sphere, your realm of your organization, and identify them, spot them. Capture them, because you're going to be using these. These are going to be at the heart of your content marketing or your story marketing moving forward. This is going to be where you're going to take all those skills as a content marketer and SEO and all that, and you're going to start weaving them into the stories that you can tell that are authentic to your organization and that absolutely back up your stories. The overall brand story. And then Act 3 in story marketing is all about capturing and then releasing those stories. So what I mean by that, and here's a really simple way of doing this. If you've got a great story to tell, sit down in front of your camera like I'm doing here. Take 2 minutes. Give yourself no longer than 2 minutes. Tell your story. All right, now you've got to capture, and this is a story in relation to your brand, what backs up your brand. Take that story now and then transcribe it. So now you've got a video record of it that you can use on Facebook, you can use it on YouTube, you can use it in blogs, you can use it anywhere, and you have a transcription of it, so you can write a blog post around that story and have that story be the foundation of it, and then go in and make your points all about your brand, and go ahead and filter in your keywords, because of course the SEO is important. Now you've gotten these two mediums. You can also take that video and make an audio out of it. And you can use it on SoundCloud, and you can use it now as audio. It can be played in presentations. You can use it for your sales teams as you collect a library of these so that they can go back in and hear different stories to jog stories in their minds that they can share with their audiences. And so now you've taken this one video and you've got 3 different pieces of content. My good buddy Jay Baer calls that atomizing your content. Number 4, there's one more thing you can do with it. Take a pull quote. Take a pull quote from that, something you really like, put some quotes on it, make a graphic out of it, and now you can use this little pull quote as a thought leadership piece, a meme, if you will, put out on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. You can use it in presentations. But what you're doing is you're giving absolute life to these stories, these moments in time that back up what it is you are trying to say. So if I was to give you a definition, let's close the show with a definition of me. All of that was story marketing. Story marketing is a marketing strategy that involves your customers through audio, visual, and immersive storytelling that places them at the heart of the story to help create profitable engagement. So no longer does it work to be pushing your thoughts and pushing your features and benefits and pushing your promo items on your audiences. You have to invite them into your story. It has to be on their terms, not yours. From their devices, not yours. Meet them where they are, both mentally and physically. Understand them so you know what you can deliver to them and really help them so you're not wasting their time and they're not wasting your time. And then share an anecdote, share a moment, share an aha that really makes this work for them. Because what we are then doing is connecting, especially in the B2B world, these sometimes cold and lifeless offerings, and we're infusing them with humanity. And that's what it's all about. That's what story marketing is all about, is connecting with our customers, using the power of story, that one tool that we know that makes us all human. It defines humanity, is the power of storytelling, and that's what story marketing is. So it's the next evolution in my mind of what content marketing is about. I'm going to be talking about this at Social Media Marketing World. I'm so excited. I'll be going back there. I was there last year. Let me tell you a quick story about that. I was invited. They were so nice. Michael and the gang at Social Media Marketing invited me to come in to do a workshop on storytelling. And mind you, I was fairly new to this because I just wound down the agency and jumping into business as story platform full time. Now, I wasn't new to business storytelling, but what I was, my next chapter in my life. So they invited me in. They said, we've got you in a room. It'll hold about 100 people, and bring your workbooks. And I said, man, that's great. I'm really looking forward to it. Excuse me, I got that cold. About a month later, they called back and they said, there seems to be a little bit more interest in the show. We've got about RSVPs of 250 people, so we're putting you in a little bit bigger room. And then about a week later, they go, wow, it's getting bigger. We're actually going to move you into the ballroom. Now, mind you, people weren't coming to see me because I was a non-entity. Nobody knows who I was, especially at the time then. They were coming because of this interest in storytelling and how do you really make it work. Well, the day of the event, we got there. We're in the ballroom. People were lining up. It was getting bigger and bigger. They ended up moving open a room, a wall. They had to fill up another half room in there, and I think we had, 1.5 million people in attendance. Oh, wait, no, that was the inauguration. We had between 500 and 600 people in attendance, and it was awesome. It was so much fun. I've had so much conversation with folks since then. I've helped some people with their brand storytelling since then. I just got a note this morning from a guy that runs an amazing garden magazine that now they've gotten rid of all advertising. They're doing nothing but storytelling, and his subscriptions are going through the roof. I'm just so excited. Anyways, the folks at Social Media Marketing World were kind enough to invite me back. I'm going to be sharing all this. I've got a 90-minute slot on Wednesday, March 22nd, starts at noon to 1:30. If you're heading out to social media marketing world, please get there early and come by and see me. I'll take you through the program, and I'll be there to answer any questions that you may have. If you can't make it, then, keep hitting me over at Business of Story or showing up here every Friday, 10 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, and I'll be back to take you through the whole story cycle process and help you ignite story marketing in your world. Starting next week, when we will take Chapter 1, Step 1, in the story cycle process, and we'll talk about how you can and the importance of defining your number one position in the marketplace, what you do better than anybody else, the foundation for all the rest of your storytelling. All right, so let me close with this. Does that look familiar? That's me. Hey, I want to give a big shout out to my great friend, Teresa Ellen Martin. We grew up together. In fact, where I took piano lessons, we're right next door to Teresa up in Bothell, Washington. And Teresa is a marvelous photographer. She's married to another great friend of mine, Mike Martin, who's actually been on my podcast. And she is a marvelous photographer. We went up there and she took some headshots for me earlier in the week, and I've got them up and running now. And I'm just delighted with them because, as many of you know, I live in Phoenix, Arizona, yet I think my heart still remains a lot of the time up at the Pacific Northwest. So it was nice to capture some of those surrounds in that photography and kind of update my own personal brand. But I want to thank you, Teresa. If you're looking for a terrific photographer in the Pacific Northwest, in the Seattle area, more specifically out in Monroe area, definitely check out Teresa Allen Martin. All right, well, thank you all for listening to my very first episode of The Park Howell Show, all about the business of story, story marketing, and where you can take story to help you live into literally your wildest dreams, because my job is to make sure that you live into your most powerful stories. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next Friday. Take care.